Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us once again. This is a continuation of the Distant Minds conversation playing tonight, rehashing an old episode of the One Good Reasons Tiger Talk. This episode is going to delve into a little bit more of the humanism versus extraterrestrials, where we kind of left off, kind of the cliffhanger with the first episode. We're also going to touch into a specific UFO sighting by a guest that we brought on by the name of Kat the Humanist. So feel free to leave any comments or suggestions for the upcoming episode 3 that'll be airing toward the end of the month. Or actually, next week, Friday, the 25th of June. I'm a little tipsy. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Robert T. Savo. He was our Ninja winner. Wanted to make sure we got that shout out for him. It's a little bit delayed, but nonetheless, he was the quick draw. I'll be giving a little bit of insight toward the end of the show, some kind of reflection on how that conversation went. So stay tuned. Other than that, go ahead and take it away, Wes.
Yeah. Mike, I think you're muted.
That was because of all the expletives I was letting out here, talking about this fucking anti-gravity shit. I need to dig into this shit because it seems very fucking juicy. So I mean, people are working on this stuff. It explodes or whatever, and the guy gets blown up and killed, and it's just kind of swept under the rug. It sounds like with this story. What the fuck is anti-gravity? I mean, I'm trying to understand. I mean, I understand for the most part what gravity. You know, the description of gravity anyway, the phenomenon of things falling at 9.82 meters per second squared, you know, or et cetera on the Earth anyway. And anti-gravity, I mean, I'm thinking of something like a centrifugal force, you know, simulated gravity, but that's not what you're talking about. I don't think you're talking about some type of energy to cancel out the effects, or
right. So you could like float, you know. Things can float, then they can go up. They don't have to, you know, it's like a repulsion
Superman
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So it isn't going to be pushed down on the Earth. It can just pop up however it wants. Wow. And that really explains the Tic Tac and those other sightings by the naval.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It definitely explains that.
That was the whole thing where entitled Distant Minds. This is going to be a part 2, and we're going to bring on our guest Carlos Disla from the previous talk to kind of pick up from where we left off and touch on some new areas that we really find very interesting in light of some new information that's been released in recent media. We also have a guest on with us by the name of Curious Kat. She's going to be sharing some personal details, and we're also going to be talking about some equipment that any distant mind or extraterrestrial might be using to travel the cosmos. So with that, I'll go ahead and bring them on now. Hey, everybody.
Hey, how's it going, Mike? Hey, Kat.
Good. So, I know you weren't in the previous talk, but we kind of left off after sharing a couple of different, you know, movies that we kind of watched and looked at some individuals in history who, you know, made specific claims about being abducted, etc., and you know, worked on, you know, greased up and let out in the woods, etc., left naked and things like this. We kind of ended that conversation talking about what an interaction might be like if an alien were to visit the Earth. And, you know, we kind of went around the room, and I think we all came to the consensus that we would try to get the fuck out of its way and leave it alone, maybe take a photo to prove to our buddies that we have evidence, etc., something like that. And I kind of wanted to rehash that portion of the talk, just because the idea of something like, for myself, humanism, as far as how I treat other humans, and the idea of ethics and morality, etc. I wanted to know how that would come into effect, or if that would be changed drastically if we were to encounter an alien. So that being said, humanism versus aliens. I want to go ahead and start off with that. Carlos, did you have any particular thing you'd like to say on how humanism might work when approaching an alien or trying to explain humanism to an alien?
Well, that's difficult perspective in the sense that, like, you know, everything repeats itself when it comes to any encounter. Imagine, the Native Americans when encountering European here in the United States, or also in any other country like the Caribbean. Um, First, I believe that you're going to freak out, but then you will be curious to understand what is it that you're seeing. So just because of the fact, I mean, we agree that anybody will have probably, after 5 minutes or anything like that, the courage to just go ahead and take a picture, um, or maybe try to understand how to approach that other being, because we are only looking at our own perspective, but we are not looking at the other perspective, like how, let's say, the alien will react about us. So it's just like any type of animal that we have on Earth that is a wild animal, that you will have a similar reaction. But I do believe that it will take a lot for the humans just to know, even if they can even trust that particular distant mind's being, just because of the fact that for as long as we know, any type of entity that we try to seek or try to understand, we always enter in a conflict. But in this particular, environment where we live at right now, um, it will be a little bit drastic. And, that there will be like a lot of difficult reaction just for us even to understand.
Would you ever say that something like humanism, and Kathy, feel free to jump in on this as well. Would you say that the term humanism in and of itself would be considered racist at that point if once, an alien was introduced into the mix? Because I look at it like we would be trying to explain what it is that we do here on the earth. Like, hey, I believe in the non-aggression principle, for example, where I don't have the right to force my will on, over anyone else's will. I have the right to self-defense and the defense of an innocent third party, etc. And I'm trying to explain what humanism is, but as soon as I get that term out, I've ostracized the aliens, right? Because human is in the name. So do you think humanism would have to be restructured or rebranded? They might be doing the same thing, as far as their development or how they treat each other, but calling it something else or labeling it something else, but it's essentially the same thing. Do you think humanism have to go basically be changed into something like, I don't know, consciousnm, or because then, the vegans at that point would finally win that battle. They would ultimately win that battle, I think. But what do you think about that, Kat or Carlos?
Well, I think, first of all, I would think that they would have been observing us for quite a while. So they would also already have an opinion about us. And I don't know if they would be picking out certain people that they would want to see first versus others, and what their attitude would be. And then it would also have to do with if they understand our language, I guess. So are you going by the premise that they can understand our language?
Yeah, I think we would have to skip over that part of it. We would have to assume that they have the ultimate Rosetta Stone, for example, or just like you said, that they've been studying us for so long before they approached, that they were comfortable enough with approaching to begin with. So we'll set aside any accidental landings like Superman, or what's that movie, The Arrival?
Ah,
Any I don't know if you saw the Arrival, but yeah, they basically showed up on the Earth and we had a communication barrier. So half the movie is trying to figure out what the hell these symbols are, and things like that. So yeah, we'll go ahead and skip over that portion of it, assuming that we that we can communicate with them. They can speak into Siri or something and translate what the fuck we're saying, and vice versa. How do you think humanism in and of itself? Do you think humans would no longer be the priority, or it would be primitive to look at ourselves in that way, or would we still need to hold on to some of that? As far as that's kind of my thing, is like, would there be an aspect of racism involved in something that we would normally view as a positive thing?
Wow. Well,
it was a lot. It was a lot.
we would be so extremely different from each other that you would just, we're different species. So it's like, to me, racism doesn't even go into the thought of it for me, because it's a completely different species. And so for me, being a humanist, I guess I pretty much try to treat most species the same, except for when it comes to things like wood ticks and mosquitoes. Then I have a different point of view, because they're, like vampires on me, and they can give me diseases. But I think when I approach them, I would either, in case they could read symbols, I would probably make a symbol of a heart with my hand, or I would come up with my hands crossed over my chest to show that I mean no harm to them. And and I would actually want to ask them what their thoughts were about our race or species, and that I bring them no harm. I guess that is the way I would approach it, that I have no bad thoughts towards them.
That's another thing, is body language. Is body language universal in that sense? Where I smile, that could be taken as baring my teeth, or
Right.
So that's another scary aspect of communicating. But okay, so you would say that racism, you wouldn't look at that as being an issue. I know some people would say that there's only one race, the human race. So that's kind of why that popped into my head, is that, okay, if everybody on the earth was holding hands and saying we are one, and then just when we get that solved, here comes this other species who's like, yeah, what about us? What now? And
right. He
it's
might
like,
have a crocodile head, for instance, and a really hairy body, and he
Uh-huh.
might not look at all like us. We have no
Right.
idea.
Yeah, it would take a long time, because we would have to, at least learn how to survive with them at the same time. Because, like, imagine you try to hook up with an alien, and that alien looking is like, really, really weird for your parents, and your parent will be like, oh my God, no. That's how all
Right.
would probably start, you know what I mean? But,
It's like racism 2.0 or speciesism, or
yeah, but
that's where I'm going with this. It's like,
yeah, by that point, I believe that we will already, stand one to each other, and know what the intentions are. Because, like, basically, Professor Hawkins said that you either get it one way or the other. Because the thing is, like, if they have, similar intentions, then you're still alive. But not knowing, it's something that you can probably die, because they can wipe us out without even telling us, what their intentions. Why would they? They're advanced. We're not. So that's going to take a lot. I mean, but it's a good argument. I mean,
I totally agree with that. That's actually something that I would say too, is that, someone would say, well, how would you know they're not going to just lop your head off, as soon as you try to show them that heart, or bring them some flowers or whatever it is, Men in Black, or whatever it is. And my response to that is, well, every second that's going by leading up to that, where my head isn't lopped off, is demonstrating that there's no violence happening, right? So it would be reciprocated on their end as well. So I'd have to look at, every second passing by that they haven't attacked me as an opportunity to communicate. So that's just something it's a Band-Aid pull. You'd have to, pull the Band-Aid, and, I'd be willing to do that. Do you either of you think that we as humans, or at least those in power anyway, more so than ourselves, would attempt to imprison them, or attempt to kill them, or attempt to experiment on them, etc.
I think
Like
we
off the
already
bat.
have, to be telling you the truth. I mean, yeah.
This is my segue. This is my segue. and with that, Kathy, I know that you have a unique experience that you'd like to share, so I want to give you an opportunity to do that now. And Carlos and I will kind of step to the side here and let you kind of explain where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, sure. I guess you could say I saw a UFO, but I think I'd like to say it is an unidentified floating object, I guess, because I really didn't see it move around anywhere. And it was at night. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I was driving down this gravel road, and to the right of me was this big cornfield, and the road was a little bit hilly, so sometimes, I'd go up on the hill and I could see better and go down. But about 2 miles in the distance, there is a shelter belt that has a farm behind it. And this is a road I'd driven down many, many years of my life. I was going out to my parents' farm where I grew up. And I looked up and I suddenly saw what looked like a huge moon above that shelter belt. And so it would be the size, I guess, if you were in the car that far away, where if you were holding a basketball out at the length of your hands, it was that big. But when things are up in the air, you really cannot tell how large they are. You know what I'm saying? But it looked like if it was above their farm, it would literally be able to fit the barn inside of it. It was huge. So I knew it wasn't the moon, because the moon was over in the east where it belonged. And it was glowing like the moon. That was the whole thing. And it was a perfect circle, and it was glowing the same luminescence as the moon, but it did not have any of the shading that you can see on the moon on it whatsoever. And then all of a sudden it would just disappear, and I'm like, what the heck, and then sometimes, the corn would get in the way. So I really slowed down. And then when it disappeared, I'd see this really bright light in the middle that kind of reminded me of a street light about, maybe about 3 blocks away. If you looked at a street light about that size, that was in the center of it. And I'm like, what the heck? And then all of a sudden the moon shape, I'll just call them that, flips back on. And so then I'm like, what is this? So I stopped the car for a little bit when I got on the top of one of these hills to watch. And when I watched it shut off, I could literally see how it was doing it. And what was happening was, if you think about a circle, and if behind or on that circle, there's like 2 pieces of paper that just quickly pull apart, exposing the middle until the ends are gone, so it just disappears. That's exactly how it was disappearing. So it was like a slit would form in the middle, and it would just whip apart, and then that light would be right in the center. And so, of course, all sorts of thoughts go through your head, and so I'm thinking, okay, is there some new airport out here that I don't know of, and this is some really weird thing they've got out here, or what is this, and you just have thoughts like that because you're just trying to figure out what it is. And I watched it for about 15 minutes. And at the time I was in an old car, and the car also had a broken gas gauge. And I was not sure how much gas was in my car at that time, but I knew it wasn't a lot. And this was before we had iPhones, and cameras on our phones. So I couldn't take a picture of it either. So the closer I got, the more nervous I got about it. And then, of course, you start thinking about the aliens. And you're thinking, what the heck? Could this possibly be something from space? And I'm by myself. So I'm starting to freak myself out. And so when I got up to the corner where I'd have to turn to go to my parents, which was another mile away, I was trying to decide if I wanted to continue to see that and possibly run out of gas in the middle of nowhere and then get abducted by aliens, or if I should just go back to the farm.
Fire in the sky.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God. Well, and then I'm by myself too, with a broken gas gauge. So it's not a good situation. So I decided, okay, I'll just go back to the farm and then maybe I can see it from there. And so when I turned the corner and got a ways past that shelter belt, I could see that it was not above that farm, but it was farther back in the distance, a little more southwest, and it still looked really large, and I was still unable to be able to tell how far away it was because it was just this big illuminated object. So I get to my parents' place, and lo and behold, they have company. And I'm thinking, what the heck? I mean, it's late to have company. But who was there but the people whose farm I drove by on the way there? And then their parents lived on a farm that was a few miles farther down the road. And so I just thought, okay, I'm going to ask them because they live here. Maybe they know what the heck this is, because this was after I'd moved away from my parents' place. And so I asked them, I said, is there like some new kind of airport or something around here, like somewhere between here and Lisbon? And they're like, no. And I said, are you sure there isn't a new airport? I'm just like so wanting to find this to be a normal object. You have no idea. And no. And I said, okay. So then I explained to them the object that I saw. And then our neighbor friend looked just stricken. And she looked at her husband. She goes, she is describing exactly what the sheriff just described on the radio a few days ago. And so she started telling me about how the sheriff had seen this and was talking on the radio and saying anybody else that has seen this, wanted to talk to him. And I was thinking about my memory, and this is quite a while ago, but I think she said it was 4 days previous that he had said this on the radio station. It was a local radio station. And so that just sent chills down my body. It's like, what the heck? And he doesn't even know what it is, and I'd never seen it before in my life growing up there. Never seen it before. So then earlier this week, I'm talking to my brother. My brother's quite a bit younger than me. And I asked him if I brought this up to him ever. And he said, no. And I said, okay, well, I said, this is going to sound really weird, but let me explain this to you. So I explain it to him, thinking, oh, great, he's probably going to think I'm nuts. So I explain this to him, and he says, when was this, Kathy? And so I said, so I told him which car I had, so I could narrow down, what year it was. And he said, well, I didn't drive then. So he said, this must have been like 6-7 years later that my friend and I saw the exact same object just a mile east of where you were driving.
Holy fuck.
But when he saw it, he never saw it open. He never saw a light inside of it. They just both saw the shape. And it was the same thing. It didn't move. And our mom tried to keep telling us, oh, it was probably a weather balloon. And I'm like, well, weather balloons don't do that, as far as I know. And so all this time, I've just had no idea what this thing was at all.
Hey, Kat, sorry to interrupt. What year was that?
I believe it was either 1979 or 1980.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I could just ask something really quick, did it make any noise? Was it, or it was just the actual visual that you got?
It was just the visual, and like I said, it was really far away, but I couldn't tell how far because it was up in the air.
But you didn't hear any after an airplane passes, you hear the the sound waves coming.
No,
or
it's totally quiet outside.
Okay. Wow.
No, and I could tell it was at the very least when I got past that shelter belt, it was at least a few miles from there, but I could not tell how far.
And have you seen anything like that since, or that was
No, I've never seen
almost 20 years
like
ago,
that.
or
Yeah.
40? Or how long ago was that now? I guess.
Oh, geez, about 40 years
Not to-
ago. But you don't
Wow.
forget it.
Yeah, that's really amazing. for some reason, I thought that you were going to get into even, I don't know, something where it tried to take you or something like that. So it wasn't that far into it. It was more of, hey, I saw this thing. It's very strange. It doesn't look like anything else I've ever seen in the sky. There's other people that have confirmed to see it. Even my own brother apparently has seen this. And then just the way that it's opening itself, it seems like it's opening, like when you were describing,
Right.
like it was like stretching apart to
Yeah,
expose this
like is that
lit up middle.
is it a force field or what is it? You know, like is
Mhm.
that some kind of a plasma shield? I mean, you know, that glows. You know, I'm just trying to think physics wise as to what it could be. You know.
And that kind of brings me into the next thing I wanted to get into was, I don't know if I think you both had seen something that one of the One Reason supporters shared in the chat. Justin, he shared with us that news clip explaining about Eric W. Davis and his whole history, I guess, working with the Pentagon as a contractor or a consultant anyway. And apparently they're going to be releasing some kind of an official transcript of a briefing or a debriefing that he gave to, I think, what's the CIA about off-world vehicles, or at least the confirmation of off-world vehicles. And I think you know some about that, Kat, as well, right?
Right. Yeah. He's actually an astrophysicist that works at the Aerospace Corporation, and he was
Mm-hmm.
well. He now is a consultant for the Pentagon for the
Or for the
UFO
Pentagon.
program. Yeah. Yeah, and he's someone that's worked on breakthrough compulsion physics, and he's also someone that's worked on this theory for negative vacuum energy. So
Negative vacuum energy. Okay.
yes,
Let's
and I
strap
don't know
in.
if it
Wow.
exactly works or not. I'm just saying he works
Yeah.
on that. Okay.
Okay.
So, but geez, from what I read on that, the way it was written in the New York Times, it definitely sounds like it wasn't something as if there were off-world vehicles not made on this earth. It's that there were. He said in some cases the examination of the materials, so he's already talking about the stuff, had so far failed to determine their source and led them to conclude we couldn't make it ourselves. Now, I don't know who all the people were that examined the materials, but that's a quote
Right.
that he said.
So
And
he's pretty sure of this then, and he seems, there's no question about it. He's
right.
Yeah, they're so sure because basically the government of UFO unit resides in one office of the Naval Intelligence that they deal with that classified matter. Um, the problem with these things is, you remember that you and I talked about this one time. That was like probably back in December of last year. That I said, hey, did you look at those footage of those UFO that the military is,
right.
disclosing and disclassifying? So, I mean, I get the point in the fact that, for some reason, if you are on a type of security clearance, not necessarily you will know the information of somebody higher. And
Correct.
I can see your argument that maybe that pilot didn't know what was going on, or didn't need to know what was going on, but nobody confirmed or denied what was happening just because of the fact they do not have the security clearance. And you
That's
know
always
what?
something in the back of my mind, is that you can't interject
Yeah,
and say, no, actually, this is what it is, because that's counterintuitive to what the security clearance is for. That's just an idea. I mean, I don't know if that is happening, but yeah.
Yeah, they
yeah.
keep everything separate so much that there isn't any communication.
So one of those information when it comes to passing to the media or just getting into somehow to the community is pretty much something that you are able to dismiss by probably saying, hey, these are just experiments, exercises, tests and stuff like that. But basically what they're trying to hide, or maybe not hide, but it's just like to work with. It's just how to understand and make sure to pass on the information. Because obviously, a lot of us are not ready to take in without information if it's true, if there's some,
Hmm.
evidence
I'm one
that
of
we are
them.
able to get. Huh?
I'm one of them. Yeah, I really don't know how I would react and respond. I mean, as calm and level-headed as I think I'm going to be, or any of the viewers. I mean, I really couldn't speak to how I would behave or react to that. I would hopefully in a positive way or in a open-minded way. But I am human, and yeah, I would probably have some level of fear or jump to conclusions and make assumptions, negative assumptions about intent and things of that nature. So, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just going to be honest. I mean,
it, it is true. I mean, just get the fact that a lot of people in the world, I'm not just going to point out the United States, but imagine if a simple mask, it's a big deal right now. People complain about it. Imagine if we have a different race or distant, minds that are more, developed or intelligent than us. People would think that they're going to wipe out the human race. So everything
that's
that you
partly our
see,
fault too, because of our
yeah,
our movies and it's like an indoctrination into negative thinking towards. I mean, you hardly see any positive um,
yeah,
interactions with aliens, as we talked about before. Um, so that being said, about him having these big balls and being brave, and he's going to go ahead and put this out. And for some reason, this is being allowed. I mean, I guess because they document everything, and for some reason, he's able to do this. Maybe because they assume that he can say anything he wants. The majority of people aren't going to accept this as true until you hold up an actual extraterrestrial or show an actual vehicle doing these things. So maybe that's why they're not really getting on his ass about it. They're just kind of, okay, yeah, go ahead and tell people, see if we give a fuck. But that being said, we were talking about just before we went live that there might be some connections to some of the things that Mr. Davis is talking about with a previous person who's been in the spotlight, Bob Lazar. So I wanted to touch on that. If anyone's watching that doesn't know who Bob Lazar is, my limited understanding of it is that he was exposed to a lot of the technology, or a lot of technology that he would attribute to extraterrestrials, and he gets into some very it sounds very sci-fi. Honestly, it does sound very sci-fucking-fi. But he's able to, I don't know, there's something about him. He's able to explain in great detail how these things would work. Now, mind you, some of the things he would say that you would need to make the technology work, he wouldn't be able to explain where to get it from, etc. But it's very consistent. I have to give him that. I really do have to give Bob Lazar two thumbs up on consistency. I haven't been able to. I mean, I watched a lot of his videos. I haven't been able to catch him in any contradictions. But what do you guys have to say about that? What do you guys think about Bob Lazar in connection, with Eric Davis coming out now?
Well, I think that there's a large connection there, actually. And when you're talking about Bob Lazar's videos, his posture, everything, the way he says it, does not sound like someone that's making something up. And I am very uncomfortable myself with this information. It's not like really anything that I want to believe. And
Right.
right, because it's a very uncomfortable thing to think about.
You should know
But
me. I'm
oh yeah,
but I think there's something of merit to look into. But yeah, please continue.
right, and well, when we think about it, number one, it was like they were trying to wipe all of his records off, and he literally used to work with my uncle down at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, and they tried to wipe those records out too, and they couldn't completely wipe them out because they found one of their old calendars that had his name on it as someone that worked there. There was a magazine article of him with his car that he made with hydrogen fuel. I think it was a Honda. Um, when he was living there, that the Los Alamos, whatever their paper is there, put out. So they didn't quite get everything wiped out. And then someone who worked at Area 51 also confirmed that he worked at Area 51, which they also tried to wipe that information out. So people were trying to hide it, and try to make it look like he was a crackpot. And so just that in itself is troubling, that they would do that, especially when you have real information that the things that he was saying are true, and they're backed by evidence. But when he started working there as a physicist and he got this job, one of the times when he went in there, they had one of the big areas opened up, and he was allowed to walk by what looked like a spacecraft, and he kind of like ran his fingers along the edge of it, and they kind of got upset with him and told him not to touch it. But later on, he was actually able to look inside of it too, and there were it was like it was all molded out of one material, and it was like there was a center console thing, but it didn't have anything on it, or there was no buttons sticking out or anything like that, and then 3 chairs around it. But he said the chairs were more like the size for children. And I can't remember how big he said that particular craft was, but he actually ended up seeing 9 different crafts in there. And
Oh, it was 9. Okay.
Yeah, there was a total of 9 of them in there, and they were all different. And he said, actually, that one that he touched, at least I know about this information, he said that one was actually dug up on an archaeological dig. So this is something that got dug up. So it's from the past, evidently. And they found the energy source in it, and it was like a circular ball, and he believed it was ran by anti-gravity. And they were trying to...
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And,
yes.
Yeah, and right before he went there, they were trying to cut it apart with some kind of a plasma laser cutter or something like that. Does that make sense? Some kind of a laser, anyway, that they're trying to cut it apart with. And the fellow who there was a great big accident, and evidently when they were trying to do this, the fellow that he replaced got killed and died. And that's who he replaced.
Is there an autopsy for this person? Are we able to? Is anyone here watching, or even myself or Carlos, able to look into that? And they list on there something specific to the cause of death, or is there something?
They said he died in an accident. Like there was supposed to be a big explosion out there, and that's how he died.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of covered that way. So I mean, we have no proof either way on that. What he said, but that's what he said.
I saw back in late 90s, like 97, 98, that there was a video of an autopsy of an alien, but it was the one that they usually show back then in the 40s. Only when it happened that one of those flying saucers ended up like in the near the Area 51 because it crashed there. So they were doing the autopsy. For me, when I saw it the first time, I was like, man, you can probably replicate all that, but the image of the video, you could tell it was from that particular year, from the 40s and stuff like that. But I'm still a skeptic because I do not have any concrete proof that it is real. But what I think is like back in those days, you wouldn't be able to replicate that good those bodies that they were doing the autopsy. But I can say with Bob Lazar, I mean, I have heard him for a long time. So the main thing is that he was explaining that when he worked in the Area 51, he was basically reversing engineering the articraft and a lot of their technology. So just like Kat said, I mean, he saw, the material. He actually was the one who talked about element 115. That nobody believed
Yes.
him. Like they were saying that he was crazy. That is not possible until Roger got able, to get hands on that material.
Right, and now it's Now it's just a known thing. It exists. So that's
Yes.
a little weird too, isn't it? That's very
Yeah.
weird. And this was way before that. So that is rather strange. And he was talking about it back then.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully y'all are enjoying the conversation. You can kind of see how it began and then kind of how it develops as more questions start unraveling and kind of the train of thought, basically, of, first of all, we can't confirm whether or not extraterrestrials exist. And at the same time, it's okay, let's play the thought experiment. If they do, are we going to be wicked and uncharitable? Or are we going to assume that the other parties are going to engage in this type of behavior just based on our own ignorance or fear, et cetera? As humanity typically does with anything that they're ignorant about. So that's kind of the passion involved with the conversation. And we're going to pick up from there. We're going to have episode 3 taking place, as I said, next week, Friday on the 25th. It's going to be a full house. We have a lot of different guests. I'm not going to spoil who's going to be involved just yet, but it's probably going to have about 6 to 7 people. I don't know how I'll juggle all those people at once, but I do want to get all these different minds, not so distant, converging at one point and kind of talking on just how our behavior ought to be if we are to communicate in a civilized way with any extraterrestrials, if the situation were to arise. But yeah, if you guys noticed, I'm being a little festive today. So I'm very excited about Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday. I know this year it's falling on a Saturday, but I'm kind of getting my celebration on a little bit early. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys appreciated the conversation, and please stay tuned to get beamed up, as I said, next week, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the 25th of June. Other than that, this has been another episode of The One Good Reason, and hope to see you guys here again. Take care.